Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a land often imagined as a dusty expanse of ancient marvels, Mesopotamia. The cradle of civilization, specifically Babylon. Forget your smartwatches, your phone alarms, even your grandfather. Clocks. We're going to explore a time when the very rhythm of daily life, from the sacred rituals to, yes, even the all-important tea breaks, was dictated not by gears and springs, but by something far more elemental and poetic. Shadows, imagine. Having your entire day synchronized by the subtle dance of sunlight across a carved stone. You probably wouldn't survive a Monday morning meeting if your only time-telling device was a stick in the ground. But for the Babylonians, it was simply how things were done. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling chatty, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing in the bustling marketplace of ancient Babylon. The sun high above, casting sharp defined lines across the baked earth. People are going about their business, traders bartering, artisans crafting, priests preparing for temple duties. But how do they know when it's time for the midday meal? Or, more importantly for our story, when to pause their labors for a refreshing cup of date wine or spiced herbal infusion, their version of a tea break? They certainly weren't pulling out pocket sundials. Their secret lay in an ingenious yet deceptively simple method of timekeeping that harnessed the most reliable, constant phenomenon of their world: the sun's journey across the sky, marked by the ever-shifting length and direction of shadows. This wasn't just about a casual glance at the sun. This was about systematic observation and understanding of celestial mechanics. The Babylonians, pioneers in astronomy and mathematics, realized that the sun's position throughout the day created predictable shadow patterns. By carefully observing these patterns, they could divide their day into measurable segments. It was an organic, fluid way to experience time, far removed from the rigid, ticking precision we're accustomed to. Mainstream historical fact: the earliest known formal time-measuring devices dating back to ancient Egypt and Babylon were indeed shadow clocks and sundials. These rudimentary instruments laid the foundation for all subsequent horological innovations. They really were the OG timekeepers. The concept was beautifully simple. Erect a vertical object, a pillar or a stake, and watch its shadow. As the sun climbed higher, the shadow would shorten. As the sun began its descent, the shadow would lengthen and change direction. By marking specific points where the shadow fell, or by noting its exact length, they could tell time. It was a cosmic alarm clock, powered by pure sunlight. You can almost hear a Babylonian craftsman grumbling, "Oh look, the shadow just hit. The third mark on my workshop floor means I only have 2 hours until my shift ends, and I can finally get my hands on that spiced barley brew." A quirky tidbit. Imagine the first person who thought, "Hey, that tree's shadow is getting shorter. I wonder if I can use that to figure out when to stop harvesting dates." It probably started with intuitive observation, then evolved into sophisticated science. They likely started with large natural markers, like prominent rock formations, or even specially erected obelisks, before developing portable devices. The initial tea breaks might have been determined by simply when the shadow of the biggest palm tree in the village reached its shortest point. Historians still argue whether the earliest uses of shadow clocks were primarily for religious purposes, signaling prayer times or rituals, or for more practical, agricultural, and commercial needs. Was it piety or profit that spurred their development? It's likely a blend of both, as timekeeping would have been essential for organizing temple services, coordinating irrigation schedules, and regulating market hours. The need for order, whether divine or mundane, was clearly a powerful motivator. You see, even thousands of years ago, people needed to know when to clock out and when to grab a cuppa from these early intuitive observations. The Babylonians progressed far beyond just a simple stick in the ground. They became master celestial cartographers, And this brings us to the Babylonian astronomy's rise. Their understanding of time isn't just about the immediate shadow. It was deeply intertwined with their profound, systematic study of the heavens. They weren't just passively watching, they were meticulously recording, predicting, and assigning meaning to every flicker of light in the night sky and every shift of the sun by day. This was far more than a hobby. It was the backbone of their scientific, religious, and even political life. Imagine dedicating your entire life to observing the night sky, not with powerful telescopes, but with the naked eye, aided only by keen intellect and countless hours of patient, methodical charting. The Babylonians were doing precisely that. They kept incredibly detailed records of planetary movements, lunar cycles, and solar positions, etched onto clay tablets. These weren't just random scribblings. They were precise astronomical tables, ephemerides, that allowed them to predict celestial events with astonishing accuracy. This dedication to empirical observation was a mainstream, historical fact that set them apart and truly laid the groundwork for modern astronomy. They practically invented data tracking, just without the fancy spreadsheets. Their primary motivation wasn't necessarily philosophical curiosity about the cosmos, as it might be for a modern astrophysicist. For the Babylonians, astronomy was deeply practical and interwoven with their spiritual beliefs. They believed the movements of celestial bodies directly influenced events on Earth, affecting everything from crop yields to the fate of kings. Thus, accurate timekeeping and celestial prediction were essential for divination, for determining auspicious dates for important undertakings, and for ensuring their religious rituals were performed at the precise, divinely ordained moment. No one wants to annoy the gods by accidentally offering sacrifices at the wrong cosmic hour. This intense focus on astronomical prediction directly influenced their shadow-based timekeeping. They weren't just marking the shadow's length at arbitrary points. They understood how the sun's path changed throughout the year, its higher arc in summer, its lower arc in winter. This knowledge allowed them to design more sophisticated shadow clocks that could account for seasonal variations, making them accurate regardless of the time of year. It was the difference between a rough guess and a precisely calibrated instrument. They knew the sun's schedule better than the sun did. Quirky tidbit: the Babylonians were among the first to divide the day into 12 hours and the night into 12 hours, creating a 24-hour day, though these hours were not of equal length, a concept we'll explore next. This division, stemming from their sexagesimal base 60 number system, is the direct ancestor of our 60-minute hour and 60-second minute. So every time you check your watch and see those familiar numbers, you're giving a silent nod to a Babylonian astronomer. Pretty cool, right? Historians still argue whether their astronomical observations were driven more by an inherent scientific curiosity, or primarily by their religious and divinatory practices. Did the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake motivate them? Or was it the desire to understand and influence fate? Perhaps, like many ancient civilizations, these motivations were not separate, but deeply intertwined, with scientific inquiry serving spiritual and practical ends. Regardless of the precise balance, their dedication to understanding the heavens allowed them to measure time with a precision unprecedented in their era, bringing order to their bustling cities and, crucially, to their carefully planned tea breaks. So, how did the Babylonians actually make those shadows tell time in a reliable, repeatable way? They relied on a simple, yet fundamental tool: the gnomon, the shadowcaster. Imagine a beautifully carved stone pillar, or perhaps a simple, upright, wooden stake, rising vertically from the ground. That's your gnomon. It's the essential, silent actor in the daily drama of timekeeping, casting the ever-moving finger of shadow that allowed the Babylonians to organize their world. Without it, you'd just have a lot of sunlight and no clue when to declare tea time. The principle is straightforward physics. As the sun moves across the sky, the angle of its light changes, and consequently, the length and direction of the gnomon's shadow shift. When the sun is low in the east in the morning, the shadow is long and stretches westward. As the sun climbs towards its zenith at midday, the shadow shortens dramatically. pointing due north if you're in the northern hemisphere, like Babylon. Then, as the sun descends to the west, the shadow lengthens again, stretching eastward. By carefully marking the positions of the shadow's tip at various intervals throughout the day, the Babylonians created their shadow clocks. A mainstream historical fact: the oldest surviving gnomons are often found associated with ancient astronomical observatories or temple complexes, underscoring their importance for both scientific and religious timekeeping. These gnomons were sometimes massive, precisely oriented structures designed to cast clear, measurable shadows onto carefully marked surfaces, such as paved courtyards or carved stone slabs. They were, in essence, giant, movable sundials that structured the daily life of entire cities. The precision of a gnomon-based shadow clock depended on several factors. The gnomon itself needed to be perfectly vertical, or at a very precise known angle. The surface on which the shadow fell had to be flat and marked with accurate divisions. And, crucially, the Babylonian astronomers understood that the path of the sun, and thus the shadow's behavior, changed with the seasons. A short shadow at midday in summer meant something different than a short shadow at midday in winter. Compensated for this by having different sets of marks for different times of the year, or by adjusting their interpretation of the shadow length. It was a simple tool, but wielded with complex knowledge. A quirky tidbit: imagine the role of the shadow reader in ancient Babylon. This wasn't just a casual job. It required a deep understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and the specific markings of the gnomon. They would be highly respected individuals, perhaps priests or scribes. Responsible for accurately declaring the time of day to the community, they were the original timekeepers, the human clock faces of their era. Oh no, priest shadow reader. You said it was time for the evening offerings, but the shadow clearly indicates we still have an hour until the sacred date loaves are ready. Historians still argue whether the gnomon's tip or its length was the primary measurement used for telling time in daily life, while the length changes more dramatically throughout the day. The direction of the shadow's tip also provides a clear indicator of time. It's likely both were used, depending on the specific application and the design of the shadow clock. What is clear is that the gnomon, in all its simplicity, was the fundamental building block of their temporal understanding, a direct link between the vastness of the cosmos and the practicalities of a Babylonian tea break. Now that we understand the gnomon, let's dive into the fascinating and somewhat counterintuitive way the Babylonians chose to divide their day. Defining hours in Babylon, unlike our modern fixed-length hours, their system was far more fluid, reflecting the natural rhythms of daylight. You see, a Babylonian hour wasn't always 60 minutes long. In fact, it rarely was. This meant your morning tea break might be longer or shorter, depending on the time of year, which, let's be honest, sounds a bit like a nightmare for modern productivity metrics, but perfectly logical for them. The Babylonians, and later the Egyptians, who shared similar concepts, divided their day into 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. The crucial distinction is that these hours were unequal hours, also known as seasonal hours. What does that mean? It means that during the summer, when the days are long, each daylight hour was longer than its winter counterpart. Conversely, in winter, when daylight hours are shorter, each hour of daylight was proportionally briefer. The night hours followed the opposite pattern. This system made perfect sense in an agrarian society deeply connected to the sun's cycles. It ensured that, regardless of the season, each hour represented a fixed proportion of the available. Light or dark, a mainstream historical fact. The concept of unequal hours persisted for thousands of years across various ancient civilizations, including the Greeks and Romans, only gradually being replaced by fixed or equinoctial hours like our 60-minute hour with the advent of mechanical clocks. This highlights how deeply ingrained the natural, seasonal approach to time was, prioritizing the division of observable light rather than an abstract fixed unit. Imagine trying to keep track of this. Your shadow clock would need a different set of markings for each month, or even each week, to accurately reflect the changing length of these unequal hours. The hour itself was less about an absolute duration and more about a segment of the day. So your tea break, if it occurred in the third hour of the day, would simply be the third twelfth of the total daylight, regardless of whether that twelfth was 50 minutes or 70 minutes by modern standards. It adds a certain fluid charm, doesn't it? Is it time for tea? Well, the sun has just entered the 6/12 of its journey, so yes, perfectly acceptable. A quirky tidbit, because the length of an hour varied, the Babylonians had to be incredibly precise in their astronomical calculations to predict these changing lengths. This pushed the boundaries of their mathematics and observation skills. It also meant that if you were traveling, your hour might be different from the hour in another city further north or south, making coordination a bit of a headache. Think about trying to set up a cross-country video call with that system. Okay, meet me at the 5th daylight hour, if you're in Nipper, but the 4th and a half if you're in Ur. Historians still argue whether the practical inconvenience of unequal hours in a complex urban society eventually spurred the development of fixed-length hours, or if the transition was purely a result of technological advancements in clockmaking. Did necessity truly become the mother of invention here? Or did the invention simply create a new, more convenient necessity? What is clear is that this system, while alien to us, was perfectly functional for the Babylonians, allowing them to regulate their daily affairs, synchronize their temple rituals, and, most importantly, reliably determine when it was time for those much-needed tea breaks. Regardless of the season, with the gnomon casting its ever-changing shadow and the concept of unequal hours established, the Babylonians needed a way to apply this consistently across the year. This brings us to daytime measurement, solstices and equinoxes. These pivotal points in the sun's annual journey were crucial for calibrating the shadow clocks and ensuring accurate timekeeping no matter the season. It was like having to recalibrate your watch every few months to account for the Earth, tilting on its axis, a constant, fascinating celestial dance that directly impacted their daily rhythm. You see, the length of a gnomon's shadow at any given hour changes significantly throughout the year. At the summer solstice, when the sun is highest in the sky, midday shadows are at their shortest. At the winter solstice, when the sun is lowest, midday shadows are at their longest. And at the spring and autumn equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length, the midday shadow would be somewhere in between, and the sun's path would be more directly overhead. The Babylonians, with their advanced astronomical observations, understood these annual variations precisely. A mainstream historical fact. Babylonian astronomers meticulously tracked the sun's path across the sky throughout the year, identifying these solstices and equinoxes with remarkable accuracy. They would measure the precise length of the midday shadow on these significant days, using these measurements as anchors for creating curved lines on their sundials or tables for interpreting shadow lengths during the intervening periods. This allowed them to account for the varying lengths of their unequal hours consistently. Imagine charts that look like abstract art, but are actually highly practical timekeeping guides. This annual calibration was essential because, as we discussed, their hours were unequal. If an hour was 1/12 of the daylight, then that 12th would be longer in summer than in winter. By referencing the solstices and equinoxes, we could correctly interpret the shadow's position to know which specific unequal hour they were in. It was a sophisticated system that required ongoing observation and adjustment, making the shadow clock far more than just a crude stick in the mud. It was a living, breathing, sun-powered instrument. A quirky tidbit, some larger fixed. Nomads in temple courtyards would have elaborate carvings or markers specifically for the solstices and equinoxes. Priests or official timekeepers would gather on these days to observe and record the exact shadow length, often accompanied by ceremonies reinforcing the celestial and religious significance of accurate time. Imagine a grand public event just to confirm that yes, the shadow is indeed at its summer solstice shortest. Praise the gods, the shadow just hit the tiny bird carving. Time for the summer feast and a very long tea break. Historians still argue whether the Babylonian obsession with solar and lunar cycles was primarily driven by agricultural needs, knowing the best times for planting and harvesting, or by their complex astrological beliefs about predicting the future. Did the practical demands of their economy inspire their astronomy? Or did their spiritual worldview lead them to seek order in the heavens? It was likely a symbiotic relationship, where both aspects reinforced each other, leading to a profound and practical understanding of time. Regardless, their mastery of the solstices and equinoxes allowed them to time their daily activities, including those crucial tea breaks, with impressive seasonal precision. While the sun and its shadows provided reliable timekeeping during the day, the Babylonians faced a classic problem when the sun dipped below the horizon. What about the night? This leads us to nighttime measurement, water clocks. When the gnomons, shadow vanished, they turned to another fundamental element, water, to mark the passage of their unequal hours of darkness. It was like having a solar-powered clock for the day and then switching to a water-powered one when the sun went down. Very eco-friendly, even by modern standards. Water clocks or clepsydras operate on a simple principle. Water drips or flows at a constant rate from one vessel to another, and the passage of time is measured by the change in water level or the amount of water transferred. For the Babylonians, they typically used outflow clepsydras, where water would slowly drain from a marked container. As the water level dropped, it indicated the passage of time. A mainstream historical fact. Water clocks were among the oldest and most widespread timekeeping devices, used across various ancient civilizations long before mechanical clocks. Use in Babylon allowed for continuous time measurement throughout the 24-hour cycle, complementing their daytime shadow clocks. This meant that the unequal hours of the night could also be measured, providing a complete system for tracking time around the clock. Even when the stars were obscured, just like their shadow clocks, Babylonian water clocks had to account for the unequal hours of the night. This meant the rate of water flow or the markings on the vessel needed to be adjusted depending on the season. During winter, when nights were longer, the night hours would be longer, so the water would need to flow for a longer duration to mark each hour. Conversely, in summer, with shorter nights, each night hour would be briefer. This required careful calibration and potentially different vessels or adjustable spouts for different times of the year. It was a fluid system, literally. Imagine the dedication involved in maintaining these. Someone had to regularly fill the water clock, ensure the flow rate was consistent, which could be tricky with impurities or temperature changes, and perhaps even adjust the mechanism for seasonal variations. It wasn't a set it and forget it device. A quirky tidbit. Ancient texts sometimes describe complex water clocks with elaborate mechanisms, including floating figures or gears, designed to make the time-telling process more engaging or to compensate for variations. Think of it as the fancy decorative version of a modern-day digital display, just powered by drips. Historians still argue whether the accuracy of these water clocks was truly comparable to the precision of their astronomical observations during the day. Water flow can be influenced by many factors, making perfect consistency challenging. Were they primarily rough guides, or did they achieve a high degree of reliability? What is clear is that the combination of shadow clocks by day and water clocks by night provided the Babylonians with a continuous, though seasonally adjusted, system for dividing their time. This allowed them to maintain a consistent schedule for their complex religious rituals, administrative duties, and of course, to know when to brew their nocturnal beverages, ensuring no Babylonian missed their midnight tea break. So why did the Babylonians go to all this trouble to measure time with such elaborate methods, whether by shadow or by water? It all boils down to their overarching purpose: organizing daily life. From grand religious ceremonies to mundane agricultural tasks, and even as the management of those precious tea breaks, precise timekeeping was fundamental to the functioning of their highly organized society. You see, they weren't just charting the stars for fun, or building the very framework of their civilization's rhythm. In Babylon, time was not a loose concept. It was critical for the vast and complex operations of their cities and empires. Think about temple rituals. Offerings had to be made, prayers recited, and divinations performed at specific, astrologically auspicious moments. Missing these precise timings could, in their belief system, invite divine displeasure or negate the ritual's effectiveness. Therefore, accurate timekeeping was a sacred duty, ensuring cosmic harmony. A mainstream historical fact, the ziggurats, those massive stepped pyramids that dominated Babylonian cityscapes, often served as astronomical observatories, providing elevated platforms for gnomons and stargazing to precisely determine ritual timings. Their architecture literally reflected their timekeeping needs. Beyond the religious, there were profound practical applications. Babylon was an agricultural powerhouse, relying on complex irrigation systems from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, coordinating the flow of water to different fields, managing planting and harvesting schedules, all required a shared understanding of time. Workers needed to know when to start and stop, administrators when to open the granaries, and scribes when to record the day's transactions. Time was the grease in the gears of their vast economic machine. Right, the 6th hour of daylight means it's time to divert water to the barley fields, followed swiftly by our collective tea break. Their legal and administrative systems also demanded precise timekeeping. Court sessions, official pronouncements, and the collection of taxes would all adhere to specific schedules. Even something as seemingly simple as market hours would have been regulated by the sun's shadow or the water clock strip. This brought order and fairness to daily commerce, preventing chaos. You wouldn't want a vendor claiming the market was closed when the shadow clearly showed it was still open. A quirky tidbit, historical texts suggest that even military movements and strategic planning could be influenced by auspicious timings derived from astronomical observations, which in turn relied on precise timekeeping. Imagine a general consulting. An astronomer before launching an attack, is the 3rd hour after sunset favorable for a siege? Will there be enough time for the soldiers to have their tea before then? Their concept of time infused every aspect of their existence, from the personal to the geopolitical. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians' drive for timekeeping accuracy was more about control and efficiency in a large, bureaucratic empire, or a genuine intellectual curiosity that happened to have practical benefits. Was it pragmatism or pure science that pushed them forward? It was likely a powerful combination, where the intellectual pursuit of understanding the cosmos naturally led to tools that brought immense order and power to their earthly endeavors. Regardless, their purpose was clear: to manage a complex society, from the grandest decrees to the humblest tea breaks, all precisely orchestrated by the ceaseless march of time. Despite their remarkable ingenuity, the Babylonians' shadow-based timekeeping wasn't without its limitations. This brings us to the challenges: cloud cover and terrain. While a gnomon was brilliant on a clear sunny day, ancient Mesopotamia, like any region, experienced weather, and their flat open landscapes weren't always conducive to perfect shadow readings. Imagine a perpetually overcast day when your only clock is a sundial. Pure chaos for a tea break schedule. The most obvious challenge was cloud cover. When the sky was overcast or a storm rolled in, the gnomon simply ceased to function as a time-telling device. No sun, no shadow, no time. This would have brought a degree of uncertainty to daily routines as the reliable visual cue disappeared. While the Babylonians did have water clocks for the night, these were primarily for nocturnal use and might not have been readily available or widely disseminated for everyday daytime use in all contexts. So, on a particularly cloudy Tuesday, people might have had to rely on less precise methods: the ringing of temple bells, the changing light of the sky, or simply a communal feeling of the time. It was a bit like your Wi-Fi going out. Suddenly, you're back to analog methods. Beyond weather, terrain could also pose difficulties. While Babylon itself was largely flat, surrounding regions or specific urban environments with tall buildings or natural obstructions could block the sun's path. At certain times of the day, creating unreliable or non-existent shadows. A gnomon situated in a narrow alleyway or at the foot of a tall ziggurat would only provide accurate readings for a limited portion of the day. This meant that timekeeping had to be adapted to the specific location, making universal time a very complex, localized affair, a mainstream historical fact. Despite these challenges, the Babylonians developed contingency methods. They might have relied more heavily on their observational knowledge of the sky's general brightness, or on regular, approximate intervals, or even on audible signals like horns or drums from central points like temples during periods of obscured sunlight. This highlights their adaptability and resourcefulness in maintaining societal order. Even without their primary timekeeping tool, necessity once again was the mother of temporary invention. A quirky tidbit. Imagine the frustration. Just about to have my mid-morning date nut tea, but then the cloud god decided to pay a visit, and now the shadow's gone. How will I ever know if it's too early for a second helping? This certainly adds a layer of delightful human frustration to their otherwise impressive timekeeping. They probably had designated cloudy day timekeepers who just winged it with an authoritative air. Historians still argue whether the practical impact of these limitations led to a greater reliance on water clocks for continuous time, or if the periods of obscured shadows were simply accepted as inevitable unmeasured times. Did these challenges spur innovation, or did they simply highlight the inherent limitations of their technology? What is clear is that while shadow clocks were brilliant, they weren't infallible. The Babylonians navigated these challenges with a blend of scientific understanding, adaptable practices, and perhaps a healthy dose of communal intuition, ensuring that even on the gloomiest days their society and their tea breaks continued to function when the sun finally set and the gnomon became useless. The Babylonians didn't simply throw up their hands and declare a time-free zone. Their sophisticated understanding of time continued through astral observation's role. In nighttime measurement, the stars, once the domain of prophecy, now became crucial guideposts for the dark hours, allowing them to navigate not just the physical world, but also the continuous flow of time. It was like having a celestial clock projected onto the vast, inky blackness above, guiding their nocturnal rituals and, for the truly dedicated, perhaps even late-night tea cravings. Unlike the sun, which moves across the sky in a single day, the fixed stars as they appeared from Earth rotate predictably with the night sky. By identifying specific constellations or bright stars and observing their positions relative to a fixed point, such as a prominent building or a mountain peak, the Babylonians could estimate the passage of time during the night. As a particular star rose above the eastern horizon, or reached its highest point culmination, or set in the west, it signaled a specific nocturnal hour. A mainstream historical fact, Babylonian astronomy included the creation of star catalogs and sophisticated tables that tracked the rising and setting times of specific constellations throughout the year. These zodiacal stars and constellations, like those associated with the modern zodiac, were not just for astrology. They were practical tools for timekeeping and navigation. They were, in essence, the ancient world's celestial clock hands, turning reliably overhead. This systematic use of stars for time was particularly important for travelers, sailors, and military campaigns operating at night. This method complemented their water clocks. Water clocks provided a continuous mechanical measure, astral. Observation offered an independent, verifiable check, especially important for long nights or when water clocks might have malfunctioned. For example, a priest might consult a water clock for precise ritual timing, but then cross-reference it with the position of Jupiter or a specific constellation to ensure astrological alignment. It was a multi-layered approach to temporal accuracy. Quirky tidbit. Imagine a Babylonian night watchman, whose job wasn't just to look for intruders, but to announce the passing of the night hours based on the stars. Hear the twin fish are now directly overhead. The third watch of the night has begun. This would have added a rhythmic, almost mystical quality to the darkness. With the heavens themselves narrating the flow of time, they were quite literally guided by the stars. Historians still argue whether the astral observations for timekeeping were primarily driven by the same religious and divinatory needs as their daytime solar observations, or if purely practical. Needs like travel and military organization were equally strong motivators. Was it the sacred or the secular that truly pushed their nocturnal timekeeping forward? It was likely a blend, as the Babylonians saw the cosmos as deeply interconnected, with earthly affairs. Regardless, their ability to harness the unchanging patterns of the night sky even without a gnomon, provided a complete 24-hour system of timekeeping, ensuring that no important ritual or even secret midnight tea break was missed. Beneath the practical simplicity of a gnomon and the observational complexity of star charts lay a profound intellectual achievement: the mathematics of shadow calculation. The Babylonians weren't just guessing. Their ability to accurately time their days, even those variable, unequal hours, was rooted in sophisticated geometric and arithmetical understanding. It was like having a supercomputer in their heads, translating cosmic movements into practical, everyday measurements. Your tea break was precisely timed, thanks to some serious ancient algebra. Their approach to mathematics was based on a sexagesimal, base 60 number system, which we still use today for circles 360 degrees, minutes, and seconds. This system was incredibly well suited for astronomical calculations and divisions of time. They used complex tables and formulas to predict the sun's altitude throughout the day and year, and how that angle would translate into the length and position of a gnomon's shadow on a flat surface. This wasn't simply drawing marks on the ground. It was a calibrated science, a mainstream historical fact. Babylonian clay tablets contain extensive mathematical tables, including those for trigonometry and geometry, far predating the Greek development of similar concepts. These tables allowed them to calculate tangents and angles, which are fundamental to understanding how shadow lengths change with the sun's position. They could, for instance, calculate the shadow length at the third hour of daylight on the summer solstice versus the winter solstice, creating the basis for accurate, seasonally adjusted sundials. They basically invented the math behind your modern compass and protractor. They understood the Earth's tilt relative to the sun, even without our modern heliocentric model. This knowledge allowed them to account for the yearly variations in the sun's apparent path and, consequently, the changing behavior of shadows. This foresight meant their timekeeping devices could be designed with remarkable precision, testament to their abstract mathematical reasoning applied to a very concrete problem. A quirky tidbit: imagine a Babylonian scribe, hunched over a clay tablet, painstakingly inscribing cuneiform symbols that represent complex equations for shadow lengths. This wasn't quick mental math. It was a serious, time-consuming intellectual endeavor. The formulas for determining your tea break might have involved more cuneiform than your grocery list. Right, if the shadow is this length, and it's the 17th day of the month of Arasana, then it's precisely the fourth unequal hour. Time for a break. If my calculations are correct, historians still argue whether their mathematical advancements were primarily a byproduct of their astronomical and timekeeping needs, or if their pure intellectual curiosity for mathematics also drove these applications. Did they develop math for time, or apply existing math to time? It was likely a symbiotic relationship, where the demands of accurate timekeeping pushed the boundaries of their mathematical capabilities, and new mathematical insights, in turn, allowed for greater precision in time measurement. Regardless of the chicken and egg scenario, their mastery of shadow calculation was a remarkable achievement, making precise timekeeping, and therefore organized tea breaks, a reality in ancient Babylon, with their sophisticated timekeeping methods. In place, from gnomons to water clocks and complex shadow calculations, the Babylonians established something truly remarkable: a social impact of a punctual society. Their ability to measure and articulate time fundamentally transformed the rhythm of daily life, creating a level of coordination and efficiency that was likely unprecedented for its era. You weren't just living, you were living on time. That meant even your tea break became a synchronized societal event. Imagine the difference this made. Before, precise timekeeping activities might have been governed by rough estimates around sunrise. At midday, when the cows come home, this worked for simple agrarian communities. But in the sprawling, complex cities of Babylon, with their vast irrigation projects, centralized administration, bustling markets, and elaborate temple rituals, a more precise schedule was essential. Everyone knowing the hour meant that temple services could begin exactly when decreed. Workers could be efficiently deployed to different tasks, and trade could flow smoothly. A mainstream historical fact: The Babylonians' timekeeping influenced the organization of labor, military operations, and public gatherings. For example, construction projects for monumental structures like ziggurats would have required precise coordination of thousands of workers, all operating on a shared schedule. This wouldn't have been possible without a reliable system for telling time. It was the original time is money philosophy, just without the digital clock. This punctuality wasn't just about efficiency. It also contributed to social order and a sense of shared community. When the official timekeeper announced the start of a new hour, it was a signal that resonated throughout the city, bringing a collective rhythm to the diverse activities of its inhabitants. It fostered a sense of shared reality and coordinated effort, from the highest priest to the humblest farmer. Even a tea break became a moment of collective societal pause. A quirky tidbit. There's evidence suggesting that certain fines or penalties might have been associated with failing to adhere to specific timings, particularly in economic or legal contexts. While not explicitly about missing a tea break, imagine the social pressure to be on time for everything else. Oh dear. The shadow has passed the mark, and I am late for my grain delivery. My reputation and perhaps my purse are ruined. This adds a delightful layer of ancient bureaucratic stress to the mix. Historians still argue whether this drive for punctuality stemmed from an innate characteristic of Babylonian culture, or if it was a necessary outcome of their complex societal structures and advanced technical capabilities. Did they value precision intrinsically, or did precision become valued because it enabled their complex civilization to function? It was likely a powerful feedback loop, where their innovations allowed for greater organization, which in turn reinforced the cultural importance of being on time. Regardless, the Babylonians cultivated a society where time was respected, measured, and used to bring order to every aspect of life, right down to the moment a weary worker would finally settle down for their much-deserved cup of herbal tea. Building upon their rigorous timekeeping and the social order it created, the Babylonians placed immense value on the transmission of this knowledge. This brings us to scribal schools and record-keeping. The institutions and practices that ensured their complex astronomical and mathematical understanding of time wasn't lost to the shifting sands of Mesopotamia. These were the ancient universities and libraries dedicated to documenting the very pulse of their civilization. See, timing your tea breaks accurately wasn't just about observing shadows. It was about generations of dedicated scholarship. Babylonian scribes were highly educated individuals, trained in cuneiform writing, mathematics, and astronomy. They attended specialized scribal schools, where they would spend years mastering the intricate knowledge required to run their complex society. A significant portion of their curriculum involved the study of celestial movements, the creation of astronomical tables, and the principles of timekeeping. These schools were the intellectual powerhouses that sustained their temporal mastery. A mainstream historical fact. Thousands of cuneiform tablets have been unearthed, containing meticulously recorded astronomical observations, ephemerides tables, predicting celestial positions, and mathematical calculations related to time. These almanacs and calendars were vital for predicting lunar and solar eclipses, determining the dates of religious festivals, and, of course, for calibrating their shadow and water clocks. These tablets represent one of the most comprehensive astronomical archives from the ancient world, a testament to their dedication to record keeping. It's like finding the world's first astronomically themed Excel spreadsheets. But made of clay, the act of recording was paramount. They understood that consistent, long-term observations were necessary to identify subtle celestial patterns and refine their timekeeping methods. Each observation, each calculation, was carefully inscribed onto durable clay, fired and stored in temple libraries or palace archives. This institutionalized record-keeping allowed knowledge to accumulate over centuries, leading to ever-increasing precision in their understanding of time. Without this dedication, their ability to time those tea breaks would have been far less reliable. A quirky tidbit: some of these tablets also contained omen texts, where specific celestial events like an unusual shadow length on a certain day were linked to predictions about the future. While this might seem superstitious to us, for the Babylonians, It was another practical application of their astronomical observations, reinforcing the importance of accurate timekeeping. Imagine a scribe diligently calculating a shadow for a tea break, then quickly checking if its specific length portends good fortune for his second cup. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for such extensive record-keeping was simply to maintain an orderly administrative and religious state, or if there was a deeper scientific impulse to systematically understand the universe. Was the documentation a means to an end, or an end in itself? It was likely a beautiful symbiosis, where the practical needs of the empire provided funding and purpose for the scribal schools, and the scribe's intellectual curiosity pushed the boundaries of knowledge, creating a legacy of precise timekeeping that endures to this day. See, even in ancient Babylon, the data had to be meticulously entered if you wanted your time off accurate. While Babylonian timekeeping was groundbreaking, it wasn't the final word. Their methods eventually faced refinement, and in some cases, replacement with the decline due to Hellenistic influence. As the Greek world rose to prominence and absorbed Babylonian knowledge, new ideas and technologies emerged that built upon and sometimes superseded the ancient Mesopotamian systems. It was like an older, well-loved operating system getting an upgrade. Many core functions remained, but the interface and certain processes became more efficient. Your shadow-timed tea breaks were about to get a Greek makeover. Following Alexander the Great's conquests in the 4th century BCE, a period known as the Hellenistic era began, during which Greek culture, science, and philosophy spread across the ancient Near East, including Mesopotamia. Greek scholars eagerly absorbed the vast astronomical and mathematical knowledge accumulated by the Babylonians, translating their cuneiform tablets and integrating their data into new theoretical frameworks. This intellectual exchange was a two-way street, but often saw Greek innovations building upon Babylonian foundations, a mainstream historical fact. While the Babylonians developed the concept of unequal hours, the Greeks and later Romans gradually moved towards the idea of equinoctial hours, where each hour was of fixed length, regardless of the season. This shift was largely facilitated by the development of more precise, mechanical water clocks, clepsydras, that could be regulated to run at a constant rate, rather than requiring seasonal adjustments. This made timekeeping universally consistent, a crucial step towards our modern system. Suddenly, your tea break was exactly 60 minutes, year-round. The Greek emphasis on theoretical mathematics and geometry also led to advances in sundial design. They improved upon the Babylonian gnomon by introducing the concept of a polar gnomon, a rod aligned with the Earth's axis or parallel to it, which casts a shadow whose tip moves along straight lines at a constant speed, making fixed-hour sundials possible. This was a significant leap in design, making sundials far more intuitive and universally readable. It was like upgrading from a manual car to an automatic. A quirky tidbit. One of the most famous Hellenistic astronomers, Hipparchus, 2nd century BCE, drew heavily on Babylonian astronomical records for his own groundbreaking work, including his discovery of the precession of the equinoxes. He used their centuries of meticulous observations to identify long-term celestial patterns that the Babylonians themselves had documented, but perhaps not fully theorized. It's like someone else taking your meticulously organized notes and writing a whole new textbook from them. Historians still argue whether the Hellenistic period truly represented a decline for Babylonian science, or simply a transformation, an integration into a larger, more globally interconnected intellectual tradition. Was it a replacement or an evolution? It was likely a complex process of absorption and adaptation, where Babylonian empirical data met Greek theoretical rigor, leading to powerful new syntheses in timekeeping and astronomy. Regardless, the precision of those shadow-timed tea breaks continued to improve, even if the methods and cultural contexts were subtly changing under Greek influence. The legacy of Babylon was not erased, was refined and carried forward. So what remains of those ancient Babylonian shadow clocks and water clepsydras in our world today? A surprisingly vast and fundamental legacy, modern times' roots, The principles and even some of the specific divisions they established are deeply embedded in our contemporary systems of timekeeping, influencing everything from the number of seconds in a minute to the structure of our calendars. You're living a Babylonian legacy every time you check your watch or mark a date. Your tea break, in essence, is still on Babylonian time. First and foremost, the Babylonians' use of a sexagesimal base 60 number system for time and angles is directly responsible for our 60-second minute, 60-minute hour, and 360-degree circle. This brilliant mathematical choice made divisions and calculations easy for them, and it has stuck with us for millennia. When you see a clock's hands move around a 360-degree face, or note that a minute has 60 seconds, you are directly experiencing a Babylonian invention. This is a mainstream historical fact that often goes unrecognized. They really set the standard for breaking down those time units, their division of the day into 24 hours. Even if their hours were unequal for much of their history, is also a direct precursor to our modern 24-hour day cycle. While the Greeks and Romans later standardized these into equal hours, the fundamental numerical division originated in Mesopotamia. So, whether you're working a night shift or planning an all-day event, you're operating on a temporal framework laid down by the ancients. Furthermore, the Babylonians' meticulous astronomical observations and their sophisticated calendars formed the basis for much subsequent calendrical development. Their precise understanding of lunar cycles and solar years, and their ability to predict eclipses, were crucial for the development of accurate calendars used for religious festivals, agricultural planning, and civil administration throughout the ancient world and beyond. Every time you flip a calendar page, you're benefiting from thousands of years of Babylonian stargazing. Quirky tidbit: while the Babylonians primarily used lunar calendars with intercalary months, adding an extra month periodically to keep pace with the solar year, their methods for calculating these adjustments were highly advanced. This dedication to reconciling lunar and solar cycles is a challenge that continues to influence calendar systems even today. Dane, albeit with more sophisticated calculations. It's like their ancient spreadsheet for balancing celestial books. Historians still argue whether the longevity of these Babylonian timekeeping concepts is primarily due to their intrinsic practical superiority, or simply a historical inertia. Where established systems are difficult to dislodge, did they simply hit on the best way to divide time? Or did their early adoption and powerful influence cement their legacy? It's likely a combination of both. Their systems were practical and mathematically sound. They were transmitted through powerful empires and intellectual traditions. So, next time you glance at your watch, calculate a precise angle, or simply enjoy a well-timed tea break. Spare a thought for the ancient Babylonians. Their simple gnomons, sophisticated water clocks, profound mathematical and astronomical insights laid the very foundation for the orderly, time-conscious world we inhabit today. From the shifting shadows of antiquity to the ticking digital displays of modernity, their legacy continues to shape the relentless, yet utterly necessary march of time as the sun sets on our historical journey tonight and the shadows lengthen. Towards your own comfortable bedtime, let's bring our exploration of Babylonian timekeeping to a gentle close. We've traversed millennia, from rudimentary sticks in the sand to complex astronomical charts, all in the service of organizing daily life, from grand rituals to humble tea breaks. Now, as the ambient hum of your modern world takes over, let the echoes of ancient ingenuity softly fade. You can almost feel the presence of those watchful Babylonian astronomers, patiently observing the heavens, painstakingly marking the passage of light and shadow. They weren't just scientists. They were the quiet architects of temporal order, bringing rhythm to chaos, transforming the abstract concept of when into a tangible, measurable reality. Their dedication, their relentless pursuit of precision, was a gift to future generations. A silent promise of organization, the very air around you, now bathed in the soft glow of your bedside lamp, feels a little different. It's infused with the subtle hum of ancient calculations. Those unequal hours, those gnomons, marking the passage of the sun, the gentle drip of water clocks through the night, They whisper a story of humanity's enduring quest to understand its place in the cosmos, to control its fleeting moments, to harness the invisible current of time itself. Remember the simple power of a shadow, the fundamental understanding that a mere stick in the ground could unlock the secrets of the sun's journey. It's a testament to the fact that profound knowledge can emerge from the most basic observations, that even the most complex systems often have incredibly humble beginnings. From that simple shadow, an entire civilization built its calendar, its economy, its spiritual life. So as you draw your blankets closer, feel the comforting weight of a well-ordered day. A day that in its very structure of hours and minutes owes a quiet debt to those ancient people by the Euphrates. Their world, with its dusty marketplaces and towering ziggurats, may seem far removed, but its rhythm still pulses in the background of your own modern life. The tea breaks they timed with such care, the rituals they performed with such precision, echo faintly in your own routines. A timeless connection across the ages. Allow your mind to drift now, letting go of the ticking clocks and rigid schedules. Of your own time, brace the ancient wisdom of the shadows, the gentle flow of water. Let the celestial rhythm guide you towards a deep, peaceful slumber. The sun will rise again, the shadows will reappear, and time will continue its eternal dance, just as the Babylonians observed. Long, long ago now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Sweet dreams.